But why? So this is what a Facebook interviewer told me. If there's someone who's technically sound and doesn't have any red flags, then there wouldn't be a reason not to hire them. If you want an internship at a big tech company, you're gonna have to do coding interviews. There's no way around it. It doesn't matter how great your personality is or how well you're able to talk. If you're not able to show that you're competent when you're coding, they're not gonna hire you for an internship position. But I want to tell you everything I know and everything you need to know about how to pass the coding interview. So let's get started. First of all, what is the coding interview? The coding interview is basically a 45-minute long interview that you have with an engineer from that company. It could be in person or it could be over Skype, and it's just their way of trying to find out more about you and whether or not you'll be able to do well on the job. They usually just ask one question, but if you're able to solve that fast enough, then it branches out into part 2 and part 3, and it gets more complex. Then at the end, usually like the last 5 minutes, they reserve for you so that you can ask them some questions. If it's over Skype or Google Hangouts, it's usually on a website called CoderPad, which lets you see the same screen as the engineer, and as you're coding, they can see what you write, and as they're coding or typing, you can see what they see. If it's in person, then it's usually on like a whiteboard, and they give you the question and you code on the whiteboard. So that's pretty straightforward, right? But what do they ask? Now, the unfortunate thing is they can ask anything, and you don't know what they're going to ask. So it's always the most stressful when the interview's coming up and you're just waiting, and you don't know what they're asking. But usually for me, after they ask a question, I'm sort of like, all right, so this is the question I have to deal with, and I can like not worry about all the other stuff. But yeah, so there are a lot of topics that they can ask on. There are graph problems, linked list problems, tree problems, array problems, array list problems, linked list problems. Did I already say that? Hash map problems, bit manipulation problems, string manipulation problems, binary search problems, dynamic programming problems, backtracking problems, and a lot of other types of problems. Some problems fall under miscellaneous, where they don't really belong to any category and they're kind of more like brain teasers. So with all these problems, the good news is you can't prepare for all of them if you have the time. The focus is more not on trying to memorize all these problems, but more on recognizing patterns and practicing efficiently and focusing more on your problem-solving skills. I'm going to go over the right way to practice and the most efficient way to practice later on. First of all, we're going to talk about if you don't know any of these concepts, how do you learn them? So there are all these concepts, right? What if you don't know what a hash map is or what a set is? What if you haven't learned these concepts yet? What if you haven't taken the class yet or haven't learned it in class? Or what if you just need a refresher? Well, there are some resources out there that are really good if you want to learn these concepts. When I got my first round of interviews, I used a site called hiredintech.com. Going back to it, it looks kind of different, but maybe the new site's also pretty good. I'm pretty sure it is. It was really informative, and it gave me an introduction to the different types of questions that are out there. Another really good resource, if you've talked to your friends about preparing for interviews or talked to tutors, everyone recommends the book Cracking the Coding Interview. And it goes into each type of question, gives you the background on it, common patterns, and gives you sample questions for each of those topics. So it's a really good way to get started and get your feet wet and learn about these different types of questions. And the last resource that I recommend is topcoder.com. Topcoder is a site where they have a lot of coding questions, but they also have a lot of tutorials. And these tutorials are really helpful, and personally I thought that the article on binary search and dynamic programming really helped me understand those concepts. So definitely, if you don't know a certain concept, try to see if it's on Topcoder. They're usually really well written and they go really in depth on the topic as well. So after you understand these concepts, the next and the final step, in my opinion, is just to practice. Just do a lot of questions and get to the point where you're comfortable with each type of question so that there will be little surprises on the interview. And the resource I would recommend, and I think the only resource I ever needed, was Leetcode.com. And what is Leetcode.com? Leetcode is a website of common interview questions that big tech companies ask. The questions that are posted are categorized by difficulty, easy, medium, hard, and also by the type of question that they are. In addition, if you pay for their premium service, they also let you see what questions each specific company asks. And not just that, they also tell you the frequency that these companies ask these questions. The questions you'll find on Leetcode is super representative of the questions you'll actually see on the interview. In addition to that, every question that they write, you can code it. So you can select your language, and then there will be an editor where you're able to write your code. After you write your solution, you can compile it and then run. You can run your solution against their test bench, and if you pass all their test cases, then you can be pretty confident that your solution works. On top of that, certain questions also have editorials where the question maker writes an explanation of the solution. And every question also has a forum. Users can ask questions or post their working solutions. These solutions, some of them are really basic and are just working, and some of them are really fast, really efficient, and it's really cool to see some of these solutions and how these really smart people think. Yeah, so it's the ultimate, I would say it's the ultimate resource to preparing for the coding interview. There were other websites that I used. When I was preparing, I also first used Sposh.com and HackerRank. First of all, I would not recommend Sposh.com at all if you're preparing for interviews. You're just going to waste your time. But for HackerRank, I feel like HackerRank is another really good resource to prepare for interviews. I definitely got a lot out of using HackerRank to prepare for their dynamic programming problems. DP, they call it. Their DP questions, backtracking problems, stream manipulation problems. They have a lot of problems for each type of question. The only problem I had with it was that I felt like some of the problems were really long-winded. They were like word problems, like, Uncle Sam is building a wall and blah blah blah, or Detective Conan has some bricks and he's trying to solve this puzzle. But on an actual interview, these problems are going to be abstracted into simple and easy to understand problems, like given this information, write a function to give me this result, or given an array of integers, find this element. They're easy to explain, but not necessarily easy to solve. So that was why I would choose Leetcode over HackerRank, at least when you're first starting out, because the questions are going to be most representative of questions you'll actually see on the interview. If you have extra time, or if you really want to practice on DP, HackerRank is a really good resource. It's like getting really cold here. Okay. So now you kind of know the resources on where you can practice and find a lot of coding questions, but how do you actually practice? That's the next topic, because you not only want to work hard, you also want to work smart. And after a lot of trial and error, I feel like I figured out the best ways you should approach solving these problems. So first of all, focus not on trying to do every problem. Instead, you should just focus on your problem-solving skills and being able to see a new problem and figure it out on the spot and work it through. There's just so many problems out there. It's impossible for you to know every problem. If you only memorize problems, if they throw you a curveball, then you're kind of screwed. Doing well on the interview means being able to combine past knowledge with on-the-spot problem-solving skills. So you need both. So when you're doing these problems, don't just try to do like 10 problems a day. Doing 3 problems a day is better than 10 problems a day if you're spending your time with each of these questions and really using your brain muscles, I guess. This was a huge mistake that I started out with. I would try to do 10 problems a day, just write my solution. I don't even look through all the test cases. I just think that it works. I compile it, I run it, and then I'm like, oh shoot, I missed that test case, fix that one. Oh shoot, I missed this test case, fix that one. Oh shoot, that one broke again. I fixed that one again until it was fixed. And so what I should have done was take my time and just try to come up with test cases and be confident that my solution actually works. One thing you can do to try to avoid this is to write all your code initially on either paper or a whiteboard. That way you're sort of away from the computer and you aren't tempted to keep compiling. Another thing you should do while you're preparing is talking out your thoughts. On a real interview, they want to see your thought process, and the only way for that to happen is if you are able to convey it well and talk them out. So while you're coding by yourself, I think they call this rubber ducky programming. Just talk to yourself, just talk through your thoughts, and it's also a good way to help you think as well. Yeah, so that's kind of the mindset that you should have when you're preparing for these coding interviews, and that's how you should approach it. Now, I'm not going to go into actually the tricks for each problem type. I think if I were to do that, this video and this video series would be too long, but I'm thinking about starting a video series in the future on just specifically on the different type of interview questions that are out there and going through some questions and really going in depth and to show you my thought process and how you could approach each of these questions. So aside from just preparing by yourself, you can also do mock interviews. Prepare questions, have your friend prepare questions, then meet up and just take turns asking questions. It's a good way to gauge how prepared you are for the actual interview. It's also a good way to get feedback on how well you're doing on the interviews. You get to see things from the interviewer's perspective, and you also get to see a different way of thinking and approaching, because oftentimes your friend is going to approach the problem a slightly different way than the way you approached it. And being able to understand their solution is another good way for you to practice that problem-solving skill that we talked about earlier. You also get to practice talking out your thoughts, and more importantly, you're able to get used to interviewing. If you do a lot of mock interviews, then you're going to be so used to it that the real interview will just be another one of those mock interviews. So on the actual interview, the biggest tip everyone gives is, again, talk out loud. The interview is not just to see if you can come up with the best solution. It's also to see how well you're able to approach the problem and how well you're able to think. And the only way the interviewer is going to know is if you talk out your thoughts. So the more you tell them your thoughts, the more information they have on your way of thinking. They commonly say that some people pass their interviews even though they don't solve the question. They're able to convey that they have a good sense of how to think. That never happened to me though, but I would say take deep breaths, stay calm. It's not going to help you when you're nervous on a coding interview and your thoughts start racing and you're thinking like 3 things at the same time. You need to stay calm, take a deep breath, and approach the problem slowly, just as you would when you're practicing. be friendly. Be friendly to the interviewer, and depending on if it's an on-campus interview or if you're doing like a Skype interview, the interviewer might have had a long day or might have already interviewed 10 other candidates. So be refreshing. Try to make their day and make it as easy for them to interview you as possible. To address a common controversial issue, what do you do when you see a question you already know? So this is just my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt and use your own judgment. The way I see it is, I know they want me. Like, I know that I'm valuable and I know that they want me. And if they hire me, I'm gonna do a good job. If there's an easier way for me to show them that, then I'm gonna take it, because I know that if I do the internship, they're gonna want me back. They're gonna wanna give me an offer. If it's a question that I saw before and solved on my own, then it's a question that I probably also remember the thought process of. So I'm able to kind of like wipe out my brain and pretend that I don't know the question, and then solve the question on the spot and show them my thought process. Because as I said before, the interview isn't just showing that you know the solution, but also showing that you're able to convey your thoughts and show that your logical thinking is sound. Now, if you see a question that's like super hard, but you just gave up and you happen to know the solution, you search up the solution, in that case, I think I just tell them, oh, I know this question, and I know the solution, and like kind of tell them the solution, but I wouldn't try to pretend like I didn't know the question and solve it, because it would be really hard to fake. And that sort of gives me an opportunity to at least get another question right. Another way I see it is like after preparing for so many weeks, so many months, seeing a problem that you kind of already know is sort of like rewarding you for your hard work. Like I said earlier, preparing for the interview is a mix of using past experience and using past patterns that you notice and using logical thinking to solve a current problem. Well, what if the past problem that you saw and the current problem is just so similar that they're almost identical? That's something that one of my friends told me, and I thought it was an interesting way of seeing it. So definitely it's up to your own discretion, and I guess different people have different ways of seeing it. If you just want to prove yourself, then just go for it. Just always be honest. But there's also another way of seeing it about how I felt like I deserved, after all my hard work, if I got a question I already knew, then it was just the fruits of my labor. And also I already knew I would be really perfect for the job and qualified, and they'd want me. If there's an easier way for me to show them that, then it's like a win-win, right? After doing all these interviews, I sort of came up with a few tricks along the way. So that's what I'm going to share right now. The first one is when you just start the interview, normally they ask you, oh, how's your day? How are you doing? I usually start with, I'm like a little bit nervous right now. And that's because I'm actually pretty nervous before every interview, no matter how many I do. But it's also a way for me to just be open with them, and it might be placebo on my part, but it makes me feel like, oh, they're gonna go a little bit easier on me because they know that I'm nervous. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I do feel like afterwards they're like, oh no, don't worry, there's nothing to be nervous about. And they're usually really friendly at the start. Another good tip is at the end of the interview, when they ask questions, ask good questions. As we said in the job fair video, one of my big tricks was asking like those deep questions. After a 45-minute interview, you've had some chance to like share some thoughts, and you should also be able to gauge how comfortable they are with you. If you're laughing throughout the interview, it should get to the point where it's almost as if you're talking to a friend. It happened a lot where asking a deep question would just sort of build that friendship even more, and it leads to a really genuine conversation where it's not just from interviewer to interviewee, but like two people just talking about life or talking about circumstances. Like I was interviewing with Tinder, and the guy and I just started talking about places to eat around LA. We started talking about karaoke. Like the hard part was already over, right? We already went through the coding problem. Now it's just a way for us to get to know each other and ask any other questions that are in my mind. Some people might say that that's unprofessional, and obviously it's not the most professional question you can ask. You can go safe and be like, what do you do day to day on your job, or what do you like about your company? But I feel like these thought-provoking questions definitely make the conversation more genuine and more real. Like I said, asking these questions is kind of like my way of screening these companies or these interviewers. I don't want to work with people who are so caught up with being professional. Like even if you look at the president or former President Obama, you can see that he's like, he's down to earth, and that's like the type of people that I want to work with. I want coworkers that don't care too much that they're above me or they know more than me. I want to work with people that can help me along and help me learn and grow. I keep saying learn and grow. And yeah, so there were some interviewers that straight up told me like, I don't think this is appropriate for this interview. And I was like, oh, okay. And that kind of like turned me off, because I just didn't want to work with those kinds of people. But yeah, if this isn't something that you resonate with, don't do it. It's really up to you. But if it is something that resonates with you, then now you know, and try using it next time. Maybe you'll have a really great connection with your interviewer and have a great conversation. The next tip I have is, at the end of your interview, you can also ask if you can give a suggestion on the app. This shows that you care to some degree about their company, right? You're like, oh, I use your app and I noticed that there's this bug and I thought of a better way you could do this. It shows that you're caring about something they're actually working on, and you're also offering value to them. And it gives them a reason to say, oh, hey, if we hire this person, they're going to offer even more value. They're going to make our app even better. So definitely, if you can think of any suggestions or improvements you can make to their application, then definitely do so. Okay, so that is pretty much all I know about preparing for the interview and performing on the interview. Watching this video is the easy part, and me talking about this stuff is the easy part. But actually doing these problems every day, every week for a long time is the hard part, and that's on you. And if this is something you seriously want, then this is the path. I sort of laid it out, told you what to do. Now it's up to you to whether or not you want to commit yourself to it and do it. Doing interview problems, it was never a chore for me. It was actually kind of enjoyable to practice thinking and solving these problems. And you're going to be doing this on the job too, and on an internship. It's not all about the free food or the free DDR machine or the free trips to Disneyland. It's also, most of the time, it's also doing good work and stretching your brain and solving problems and changing the world for the better. But as you're interviewing, don't be too discouraged if at the very beginning you're getting rejected or you're not doing too well. They say rejection is feedback. If you didn't get it, then doing interviews is always a good experience, and it tells you what you need to improve on. And as you do more, you're only going to get better, right? So doing interviews, if you get rejected, it's like their way of saying, oh, you're not ready. But that doesn't mean you'll never be ready. So just keep working on it. Another thing is like interviews are a crapshoot. They're very random, and as I said, there's so many topics. There's actually something called the interview anti-loop. There's a really interesting article I read on it, so you can check it out. I'll put it in the description. Basically, though, the idea is that you have no control over what interviewer you get or what problems you get. Maybe you practice a certain set of problems and this interviewer just finds that another set of problems is like what they think everyone needs to know. So they'll ask you a question that you're not prepared on, and there's really not much you can do other than trying your best. But like I said earlier, you should only worry about what you have control over. You have control over how much you prepare, but you can't control what problems that you see or what problems that they give you or what interviewer you get. So don't worry about that. And just believe in the process. Just believe that if you keep working at it and you keep working on these problems, you're going to get that interview in the end. So I know I hinted on some mindsets and perspectives that I have in the previous videos and even earlier in this video, but that's going to be the main topic in part 6, mindsets and mentalities. I feel that when you want to achieve something, you first have to know what to do, right? You also need to have the right way of approaching things, or else you're So after knowing what to do, I think it's very important that you see things in a certain way and approach things in a certain way.